Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public recognition tonight, and this is under public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not important. We have some cards. Thank you. Okay, first we have Terry Zuwistak. Am I saying that right? She would like to speak on the diversity plan.
All right. Hi, my name is Carrie and I'm a freshman at DHS. We can help students to start accepting people of different backgrounds by using team building activities. Speaking as a student in this district, I know that most students think that team bonding activities are pointless. However, it gets them out of class so they put up with it. When I say team bonding, I don't mean the common, let's stay in the classroom and not make matters complicated sort of activities. I mean a full-on bonding day. Perhaps on a half day, we could sort the schools by grade and face obstacles. I have a few ideas that are less known. They're a bit more complicated, but they're not pricey. Here are a few examples, but the possibilities are endless. These just seemed interesting. Some examples are the shoe tower, where students take off their shoes and use them to build the tallest tower. Night trail. Working as a team, students are blindfolded. They have to follow a rope and try to navigate their way around a series of obstacles. Island of punishment. The team is split into 3 subgroups, with each with its own limitation, location, objectives, resources, and guidelines. The groups must discover, coordinate, and complete a sequence of complex and interdependent tasks to move towards completion of the activity and overall team success. Blind retriever. Basically a version of capture the flag, which is also a possibility, but students are blindfolded. Teammates must use communication and trust to succeed. And finally, sheep and shepherd. In smaller teams, blindfolded teammates must be guided into a pen by the shepherd who is giving them verbal commands. At the end, the team with the most herded sheep win. But why just stop at one day? Discrimination happens around us every day, and we should work together to help prevent it. It's like going to Subway to get your favorite sandwich and then getting angry at the person in front of you for ordering a different sub, even though it doesn't affect you in any way. That's what people sound like when they say that someone's differences affect them. Incentives can be fun and difficult too. Oftentimes, while on social media, I come across people who make fun of others for having disabilities or special needs. In a possible incentive, we could challenge students to not use a part of their body for an entire class period, maybe no dominant hand or no legs. If a student is caught using that part of their body, they're disqualified from the incentive. I hope that my words tonight were at least somewhat useful to you. Thank you for your time and attention.
We have Laura Vasquez.
Oh, I can't follow. My name is Laura Vasquez. I'm a resident of this district and a faculty member at NIU. In 2014, Sean Fraser and I co-chaired the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force at NIU. Like all institutions, we had changed, and we responded to those changes in an uncoordinated fashion, in some cases misplacing resources, assuming we were addressing the needs of our student population. The president and provost recognized it was time to pause and carefully examine what was working and what needed rethinking. Sadly, we did not have the benefit of the kind of extensive study Dr. Cohen has done for you. Self-reflection is an important institutional strategy, and it can only help us do our jobs as educators. All students deserve the best we can offer in terms of academics, but also in terms of climate. They are learning important life skills, and misguided intentions can be harmful to their ability to learn and to thrive. Please move forward on this diversity planning process. I strongly encourage you to be proactive in your vision of improving our children's education. Supporting the recommendations in this plan is a wise decision that can only enhance the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Alvina Ivy.
Hi, my name is Alvina Ivy. I have been a member of the teaching staff of the Dekalb Community School District for 19 years. And I just would like to encourage the board to fully implement all the recommendations presented by Dr. Adams and Dr. Cohen a few weeks ago. See this as an opportunity to further demonstrate your fiscal responsibility by capitalizing on the investment that you've already made in terms of professional development and Institute Day and other meetings. An opportunity to begin in earnest the work that has been supported by data for the last 10 years or more. An opportunity to reimagine Dekalb with its new reality as a place where issues around diversity are not problems, but possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jenny Parker, and diversity plan is the subject.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to say something today. My name is Jenny Parker. I'm a 22-year resident of Dekalb, and for those years I've been involved with the district in many different levels. I'm also fortunate enough to share in the lives of 2 children who are part of the district. And in my professional life, I'm the Associate Vice Provost for Educator Licensure and Preparation at NIU. And Dekalb is our oldest and most involved school district, and so we're very fortunate for that. So through both my personal and professional lenses, I'm here to strongly advocate for and support the board moving forward with the vote that was taken November 1st of last year, so approving the needs assessment and the subsequent professional development and diversity plan. Now that the needs assessment is complete and the findings have been shared, the professional development and the diversity plans are critical next steps. This district, as you know, is diversity rich. Last year, it became the minority-majority district, and the diversity plan will provide the guidance to better understand and appreciate culturally and linguistically diverse students. It will allow for the continued development of a multicultural curriculum in which all students can see themselves. The plans will provide the avenues for the culturally competent and responsive workforce so that every individual connected, every touch with the students will have the support and training and cultural sensitivity. In addition to impacting those currently in the district, the development of a diversity plan also models for our future teachers the importance of equity, inclusion, cultural competence, and responsiveness. We have so many future teachers who are so very fortunate to be placed in this district to learn their craft. Teaching diverse students as part of an environment of cultural responsiveness will provide an incredibly valuable foundational experience upon which these future teachers can build. I appreciate your time and once again strongly advocate for the board's continued commitment to the diversity plan and its implementation. Thank you.
Next is Kim Pasega, and she'll be speaking to the diversity plan.
Hi, my name is Kim Pasega. For those of you who don't know me, I've been a teacher in the district for 23 years. Right now I teach resource at Brooks Elementary. I also happen to serve on the Social Justice Committee and several other committees on the district. I'm here tonight to respectfully ask that you move forward with the recommendations and the subsequent diversity plan presented by Drs. Cohen and Adams. This plan and the recommendations will impact district families in meaningful and effective ways. Many of the recommendations put forth in the assessment won't cost extra money, but they can give direction and allocation of resources and help prioritizing goals. When I sit in committee meetings, oftentimes we're tasked with making a decision about what type of professional development we should provide teachers or what program we should adopt for our students. And this plan can help us make those decisions on the ground in a smart way, in a smart, cohesive way. I look at this needs assessment as a starting point for us to meet the challenges put forth by things that are outside of our control, by Common Core, by PARC, but here we are in Dekalb. This is what we need. And it's a starting point to help us bridge that gap, because if we can meet the needs of our students and our families and our staff, we're more likely to be able to help our kids meet those goals and achieve higher. I wanted to give you a view from the trenches about how these recommendations can be used on the ground and how much they are needed to move our district forward. The recommendations will help us use our limited resources in the most effective way possible so our kids can achieve at the highest level possible. Thank you for your service to our community. It is much appreciated. Thank you.
Janine Sostak.
Hi there, my name is Janine Sosa, and I am a parent of 4 children who have been to the district, 3 of whom are currently here. I want to preface my comments by noting that I'm a black belt too, which I know appearance-wise doesn't seem that way, but I've competed at nationals. I've intervened in countless physical altercations between people for my entire life, and never once in doing so have I felt afraid. I've also challenged friends when it comes to their making comments that are discriminatory or racist in nature. I've actually ordered them to leave my home if they're not willing to change that or respect that boundary of mine. And never once in doing so have I felt afraid. Several months ago, right after the Charlottesville issues, I saw a Facebook post about the "Hate Has No Home Here" signs. A minimum of 5 signs was required in order to make an order for those signs. And I knew I wanted 1, but I certainly couldn't use 5. I felt afraid. And I was afraid to ask others if they wanted 1 too. I felt afraid of potential for rejection or retaliation, repercussions. Fear is not a comfortable feeling, so I decided I had to power through, and I held my breath and I shared the post on my own Facebook page, asking if anybody else was interested. A few minutes passed by, nothing bad happened, the world didn't explode, so I got a little bolder, posted it to my neighborhood Facebook page, and I'm the admin of that page, so I knew I wouldn't get kicked off of it. There was no backlash there either. So in fact, people actually started ordering the signs. So I branched out to a community page, the Dekalb School District page, and that's where I met Kim. And we kind of united on the sign orders and got, a bunch of them ordered. But having a second person there emboldened me to want to go further and to push a little farther because I wasn't alone. Each time I posted to a new page, I confided in Kim, but I kind of felt more like I was confessing, that I pushed the envelope a little bit further. I kept waiting for someone to tell me that I couldn't do this, that I had to stop, but no one did. People approached me, though, and confided in me that they wanted a sign, but they were afraid to call attention to themselves. They were afraid of retaliation, of becoming a target, and they were afraid to display a simple sign in their yard or on their wall. I also made new friends, found other people who were willing to take a stand, which made me feel bolder. In total, between the 2 of us and the school district and community members, we ordered 168 signs, 92 magnets, and 118 posters. I had people tell me that the signs weren't enough. They were a way to make people feel like they were doing something without their actually having to get involved. So I started the Facebook group where we share things related to diversity. We try to share suggestions on getting involved, making a difference, educating ourselves and educating others. Taking a stand is a start. My going public with this opened the door to powerful conversations between myself and others in the community that I never would have had otherwise. Over the weekend, I was tagged in a post about one of the signs in Sycamore that had been defiled with white supremacy stickers. And I felt really angry when I saw that. I felt afraid. I even felt responsible. People reached out to me, though, throughout that community that has been built, supported me, and it made me feel safer, stronger, and bolder, and like I needed to continue because I wasn't alone in that fight. We need to give our students that same sense of community. They need a venue where people can come and get to know people who are different from them, where people can feel safe to share their thoughts and ideas, where they can ask respectful questions and get respectful answers. We need a place where people can feel safe and supported standing up to hate, to know that hate is not going to be tolerated, and people know if they take a stand, there'll be someone there to stand beside them.
Next, we have Lisa Seymour, and she wants to speak to the diversity plan.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. As my sisters have already spoken before me, I am a very strong advocate for the diversity plan. I am a parent of a 9-year-old male who has the opportunity to go to Brooks Elementary, and I've been an active parent since he's been there since kindergarten. And I am thankful that I have a relationship with Principal Condon, that when things come, because my child has had to face discrimination from students, 3rd graders, where he's been called the N-word, or he's been called because of the color of his skin. And I'm not going to get emotional, but I'm not just doing this for my son. This is for all children. No matter what color or race, this plan is important that we raise cultural competent young adults who is very ready to carry the torch to bring love into this community. Because I said sisters for a reason. I don't care what color you are, you're my sister. And that's the point that we need to get to. It's not about the color. We just light shades of each other. And we need to respect one another, get to know one another. When we get to know one another, I had the opportunity to know Principal Condon. because it didn't start off well. I'll come out here. It didn't start off well. But we haven't had the opportunity to sit across the table. She gets to understand where I'm coming from. I get to understand where she's coming from. And we have come together to work for not just my son, but for all the children in Brooks Elementary, to make sure that they know they have a home, they have a place, and that they matter, and that they will be somebody no matter what nobody say. So I strongly suggest that you all come together, make it happen, so that we can provide everything that is needed for our teachers. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do, so that our students and our community can get what is needed. Thank you.
Next is Lisa Becker, speaking to the diversity.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lisa Becker. I'm a school psychologist here in the district. I've been working here for just under a decade, and I'm really grateful for everyone who's been speaking. They're giving great emotional firsthand accounts. And, I'm not that person to do it because I'm kind of a data person, so I'm going to speak from that. Why are you laughing? Okay. So my support for the diversity plan, and of course the accompanying PD. So as a school psychologist, I'm tasked with collecting and analyzing data from lots of sources, and then synthesizing that data to make educational recommendations that improve the lives of students within the parameter of laws, IDEA and ADA. So if I have data to suggest that there's a problem with the student's learning, I am tasked with working with the team to propose an evidence-based intervention, right? Implement the intervention, continue to assess using formative methods, right? All my teachers are like, I make adjustments in the intervention as the data comes in over time, right? To improve it or change it. So this evidence-based problem-solving method is the one we employ throughout the district to ensure best practices in the intervention delivery. And so I expect the same method that I would expect the same method it would be useful with regards to the work conducted by Dr. Cohen and Adams. We have a significant amount of data that tells us there is a problem. Ethically, we need to develop evidence-based solutions to that problem and monitor our progress towards those goals and continue to tweak our solutions as we go. The diversity plan would allow for such a framework. So I and my colleagues need the guidance of experts, such as Dr. Cohen, to help us meet the needs of the children in all of our districts, but particularly those who feel marginalized. I know we can do better because I know the work ethic, intellect, and passion of my colleagues, but we need help to get there. So please don't stand in the way of the help that we as professionals need to affect the positive change in the lives of all of our children. Thank you for all that you do, and I appreciate having this time.
Maurice McDavid, he's going to speak on the diversity.
My name is Maurice McDavid, and I currently am Dean of Students at Dekalb High School. But in 2003, 2004, I was a sophomore at Dekalb High School. And I sat in a humanities class where we were reading Huckleberry Finn. And as many of you may know, that book uses the N-word over 100 times. And a teacher who I loved dearly and still communicate with today, she looked, after writing the N-word on the board, she looked at me and she asked me, as the only African-American student in that class, how do you feel about it? And I knew exactly what she meant. She wanted the Black perspective. And in that moment, I didn't really know kind of how to handle it. It took me some time to kind of process it. That was a teacher who cared about her kids. She taught the curriculum well, but she did not have necessary training to know that to isolate this African-American student is probably not going to help to create a more welcoming environment. In 2005, as a senior at Dekalb High School, I was given the opportunity to be a part of Project Breakthrough, which worked with the Stearns group. And we did a diversity survey, and we came with all of this data, and nothing happened. And so now here we are, 12 years later, long enough for me to now be an administrator in this district. And I'm asking for us to do something. The Dekalb High School that I graduated from in 2006 is not the same Dekalb High School that we are in currently. The demographic numbers have changed drastically. And I find myself in that building every day thinking, we got to do something. We have to do something differently. So we can acknowledge the change that has taken place over that amount of time, and we can say, okay, we'll just keep doing the same thing, or we can be purposeful and make a conscious decision to help and to be proactive in acknowledging and working with the changes that have happened within our community and within our school. This past Friday, we had an Institute Day, and at the end of this Social Justice Institute Day, there was a teacher who stood up. She said she was fresh out of NIU, and she said, I've learned so much today, but my question is this: what do I do? And the diversity plan is the answer to that question. That professional development is the answer to that question. It is the now what from the data. I sincerely thank you all for the work that you do, and I appreciate you giving me some time.
Next, we have board committee reports and correspondence. Anybody?
Yeah, I think after the last board meeting, at some point, I went to curriculum night at Lincoln. That was a really good night. I won't expound on that, it's been a while ago now. I went to the Institute Day the other day. I listened and observed and talked with just a few people. There was quite a lot that was said and discussed. The best part I got out of it was watching everybody in the cafeteria afterward collaborate with one another and talk about what they'd seen and heard. But it was an eye-opener and a good thing for me to go. I think Howard, you also were there. So 2 of us board members did get out to the Institute Day, and it was something good to watch.
Howard and I went to the communications committee meeting. Howard, do you have any thoughts on that?
I found that the communications committee was very much focused on working together to try to make sure that we eventually find differentials for a communications officer of some sort that handles social media, so that we can make sure that we tell our own story rather than have the story told for us. That's
At every school.
at every school.
Every school. Someone to that is tasked with the concept of taking pictures, finding information about the school. Currently, it's kind of haphazard, and the concept is to make that a person-based, differential-based for each of the schools, and have somebody getting that information out to various outlets.
Which, by the way, is part of the board goals. It's one of the goals.
I do. I actually was able to attend the talent show, and I can't remember if it's Thursday or Friday. I'm sorry, 5 kids, so I don't remember what day is whatever. But it was very nice. You know, I actually was. I left there, and Howard was there. Howard and I were there. I left there feeling really empowered. Our students feel like it's a safe environment. It was a safe atmosphere. You know, students aren't really given that opportunity to not have a structured environment a lot of the times. And this really just gave them that outlet to really express what they wanted to express. There was a student who really moved me, and he performed a song about suicide. You know, it's a very popular song, obviously, but for teenagers and in hip hop. But the way he performed it, the way he kind of added that speech beforehand, and kind of just let the crowd know this is if you're going through this, you're not alone, and just express his concern with suicide. I just left there feeling very, very, very good about myself and all the students, how they empowered each other. There were students that performed, that did wonderful work. There was 2 students that are part of the foreign exchange program who felt very empowered to sing a song together. There were kids who were breaking down as they were trying to sing the song, but the crowd encouraged them. And I really just saw an atmosphere of diversity, of people coming together of different races and ideas, but just empowering each other to just perform and do what you do best, And it was an outlet for the kids. I really was moved, and it speaks highly of Dekalb High School, the atmosphere that they're creating, how students are feeling safer, are feeling comfortable with each other, and are empowering. And that really is what it's all about. So I thank you for that work. Students, teachers, admin, everybody on that.
Well, I couldn't have said it better, and I wish you had left me a little room to actually add something of my own into it. But the one thing that I do want to add is the students who performed for knockout talents. They're just worth paying the entry fee to walk in and hear them and see what's all going on. It's well worth it.
And I was able to attend a fitness afternoon at Jefferson last week, and they went outside the last hour of the day and walked around the building and then broke down into different groups and different games. Some of them were running quite a big loop multiple times, a lot faster than I could have. A lot of them were just playing, games of putting a hula hoop over a pole and just a lot of different games. They had a great time, and thanks to the Jefferson PTA for putting together a great afternoon.
And Carrie and I were at the insurance committee meeting, but they're here tonight to talk about it, so it's a more formal presentation. So.
All right. Okay, next we have presentations, 2017 summer school, elementary, middle school, and high school. And this is a informational item.
So, Donna Larson will speak to the Summer Academy, which is for our elementary students, and she used the baseball term pinch hitting for Kim Lyle, who was at the Cubs game tonight. And then Wendy Stannis will speak to the ESY, Tim Vincent, the middle school, and then Donna will be up again. James Horn is at the Illinois Principal Association Conference, so she'll speak to that as well.
Many hats tonight.
Yes, that's exactly No, all right, so I will first start off with the Summer Academy side of things. As Jenny was discussing, I was able to be the building principal for the Summer Academy and ESY program. Wendy and Kim were able to set it up. I actually just had a little one at home, so they did the setting up of the program. I implemented it. We all came back and we talked about the data after everything was all said and done. So here's some logistics on the side of things. We have some changes that we've implemented this year, but basically we stuck with the same program. As you can see, we had for Summer Academy 4-hour literacy-based programs. It was housed at Founders Elementary this school year. For the past few years, I'm not sure how many years it went back to, but we were at Portland Elementary. So we ended up implementing this program at Founders this year. So it was kindergarten through 4th grade, and students were chosen based on the scoring in our yellow tier. 4 hours daily, June 12th to July 12th, and we also had a few days off for the July 4th break. We also wanted to make sure that with our schedule components, as we built that schedule, 4 hours a day for 20 days, you would think, what does that all entail? By the time you get the kids off the bus and out the door, it goes really, really fast. So students all met in our commons area for breakfast. They also were provided a snack. So everyone had breakfast, snack. We implemented reading, writing, math.
There were some farm bureau lessons where actually Kim went and met at the farm bureau because we were down on the farm theme and was able to get a lot of enrichment materials for the students and for the teachers to access those materials. So basically what we do is we collaborate, we come together, bring a bunch of materials, our teachers come in for some institute days and they create all of these lessons and reach out and look for different materials and they create this all together. And it is a really, really neat focused process. We also have PE, we had art, technology integration. We also had the Community Illinois Extension Program just for 4th grade. And what that was is they came in and they were able to cook with our students in 4th grade. So that was a really neat activity to see. I also was able to bring in a petting zoo the day it rained, the only day it rained. So that was really fun. The kids got to go into the gym. There were alpacas running around and it was a good time. All right, so our staff, for Summer Academy staff, with 13 classrooms, 11 English and 2 bilingual classrooms. So obviously you can kind of look at the logistics up there. I think that you guys have the presentation in front of you. Our specialists, what was really neat was we only were able to have adapted PE last year for our ESY portion of the program, as well as we did have one other PE teacher, but we were able to implement 8 days for the students instead of 4 days. So we were able to we're able to provide that for the students, and it's just really neat to see them interact and just get involved and have more of a relaxed setting for the summer program instead of such a structure. One art teacher for 6 days, which was really neat. It was a high school art teacher, and he was able to come down to the elementary levels. So it was a different perspective, a different lens. The kids really loved his ideas. 2 reading specialists for 3 days to assist in assessing all students. So at the end of the program, these 2 reading specialists were able to see each student to collect the data. So that was involved for Summer Academy. Administration, we talked about the setup and that I ran it. So we had 350 students that were invited. 217 families committed to attend. 153 attended 80% or more. So again, you get into that big meat of the summer where some students have family vacations, other, since it's summertime, they might have some just family obligations. So it's kind of difficult for a lot of our families to commit. We will invite them based off of the data from our spring MAP scores. And it's, you know, they commit and then some things come up after the invitations are sent out. Students were assessed at the end of 20 half days using the spring benchmark. So that's what the data, what we were looking for to see the change. Our goal was to maintain the students across scores from the spring assessment. So here is the data that we were working with from K through 4th grade, if you can take a look. So blue were the number of students that accepted to come and attend the program, and then the orange was attended the 80% or more for the attendance. Now what we're looking at is at Founders, so since Founders is located in town, we're kind of looking at the differences between Cortland, where it's all busing, and you're also looking at then Founders actually being a community school. Next slide. So as we're looking at this, obviously, so the blue is the expected growth for the 4 weeks of full day instruction, and our orange is the student growth, but these are only 20 half days of the instruction piece. So if you're looking at kindergarten, I know it looks a little scary with that data, notice that those students are not used to this type of implementation. And just the half day, different school, you're looking at a lot of different components here. Next. Oh, go ahead.
So we wanted the students to maintain 0, because 0 is maintaining. So if they were above 0, in terms of the orange, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. If they dropped below 0, then they didn't maintain.
Successes. So the teachers did find that the 4-hour sessions of conducted to teaching the skills needed. Teachers used guided reading with instructional level materials from the level book room. So like I said before, we go in, we bring in all these materials, and the teachers get their class list maybe, what was it, a month before we were able to meet with them. So they're able to kind of collaborate with previous teachers, look at scores, all within a month's time. Also, teachers use the technology to support foundational literacy skills. So they were able to go on Myon and Core 5 daily with, we provided the Chromebook carts for each class. So they were able to do that. Breakfast, that was a really fun time. Everybody met, like I said, in the cafeteria. I kind of touched on all of this though. So you guys have all the information, but I tend to talk before the slides go. All right.
So extended school year is a little different than summer academy. Extended school year student participation is driven by the student need and the IEP team agreeing that they would benefit from that extended school year. We look at the degree of learning that we want them to maintain and that expected loss. So we typically talk about a 6-week recoupment. Students that would be eligible for extended school year, that we would anticipate that it will take more than 6 weeks that next school year to get them where they were at the end of the school year if they don't have that. So there is a criteria, guidelines that the teachers, the case managers, and teams follow to help determine that. Again, we are just looking at maintaining skills. We're not expecting to see growth over the summer school program. With that new guidelines and criteria that we set forth this last year, we did have a decrease in students enrolled for extended school year that kind of helped us to narrow down the students that would be most successful in that setting. So we did have a multitude of classrooms all the way from early childhood up to the high school and the transition program. We had 16 certified teachers, 2 nurses, 1 at Founders and 1 at Dekalb High School. The high school program is housed at the high school. We did have a speech and language pathologist. Donna was our principal, a secretary, and 49 instructional assistants. An adaptive PE teacher works 6 days across the district with those students. We also contracted OT and PT services through NIA, which is our normal contract agency for that. The average student attendance was 87%. That was an increase from last year. We look at the end of the summer school, there are 3 identified goals that the case managers choose for students to work on over the summer. So these are only 3 of their goals and objectives. The summer school staff takes the data and then marks in service tracker whether or not it's not been introduced, there's no growth shown, but not the expected progress, making expected progress and mastered. So as you can see, we have 90% of the students showing growth over that extended school year. So it is showing that is very successful for them. In terms of staff feedback, teachers were very pleased that if they had students on their case list, that they also had those students in the summer school program. They knew their students, the assistants knew their students, it made for a smooth transition. So we do that when possible for students. The ESY staff is usually using our service tracker, which is our online tool for their IEPs and that data collection, and that's been very helpful for that. This is the 2nd year they've been using that rather than paper copies of all the goals, handwriting everything out and turning it back in. Staff shared that they liked having their meeting in May. That gave them an opportunity to look at the information, go to case managers or other related staff, see what they can do to set up their classrooms for success for those students. They appreciated that time to have that experience for the students. They felt very prepared from ESY. They felt supported during the summer in terms of any questions or behaviors that needed to be addressed. The staff is able to support that and work together, and that the curriculum that is provided was very appropriate.
Breakfast and snack were phenomenal. It was a great opportunity for kids to practice those skills of eating and portion control and social opportunities during that time, so that was a great activity for them. Recommendations, things that they would like to see in the coming years was for us to look at that social emotional need of students and provide some social work support possibly. Early childhood would like to remain at ELDC if possible. Their center is set up for that. It's very difficult to move all the equipment over and work with the students. Some teachers were concerned about attendance for some of the students. There were 20 students that had over 5 absences. The issue being that with Summer Academy, if there were attendance issues, you guys made phone calls home.
Correct.
And ESY is a component of their IEP, so it's a legal activity and we have to provide those services. To create that rubric to help determine what students would find success, we did create that and implemented that. I think there are some things we can tweak on that, now going through a summer with that, and that they would like more information on students prior to ESY, if they're not on their caseload, and access to cooking activities across the board. Great opportunities for our students to practice those skills. Any questions on ESY? Okay.
Okay, so for middle school, this is our 4th year running it kind of in the same fashion. We're at Dekalb High School. We utilize 4 teaching staff. 2 are reading teachers, 2 are math teachers. So it's a kind of a pared down version of what you've seen with the academy at the elementary. So for incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, we target students in the from the 10th to the 40th percentile, kind of that sweet spot for us. And the goal of this is it's really twofold. It's to see if we can make up some of the growth from the previous school year, as well as maintain it for the next school year. So that'll be one of the recommendations that I talked about a little bit later. We ended up with 76 total participants. We invite kids in tiers. So we start with the 10th through the 15th percentile, for example, see how many we get to sign up, and then kind of move up until we get to our target. We try to shoot between 60 and 80 kids for that. That's been a nice number for us the last 3 years. In fact, 4 years ago there were much fewer students. So we've been pretty successful at getting our target number in that way. So our basic skills reinforcement in math, basically our MComp is a basic skills sort of computational fluency measure. We use that as a pre-assessment, and then the math teachers use that sort of to see where kids are struggling and reinforce those skills. In reading, our Read 180, which you've heard a lot about, our Read 180 has an R series, which really fits really well in our summer program. And there's again a pre and a post for that. You heard Donna talk about breakfast and a snack. That's been something that's been kind of a hook to summer school attendance, and getting kids here for elementary and middle school summer school is a challenge, and it's something that we really prioritize. So the breakfast and the snack, that's fully reimbursed to the district is a real plus for us. So you can see our attendance rate was 90.5%. That's last year we were very happy with 87. So just above that, we're pretty thrilled with that. As far as the pre and post data, the kids on that R skills reading assessment, they essentially stayed at the same comprehension level, but they did move up in the level that they get to. So none of them started in level 4, and we had several get to level 4 for reading. As I mentioned, the MComp and the math gains that we were able to make during summer school were pretty significant. The norms for per week of instruction are between 0.36 and 0.5 per week. So this is 4 weeks of instruction, kids gain 1.5 per week. So that's significantly above what we expect. So as I mentioned, in summer of 2014, so 4 years ago, we did tweak the way that we invite kids. It resulted in going from 36 kids in summer school up to between 75 and 80. We've really hit that number pretty well the last 3 years. And the last 3 years, we reached the highest point that we have really ever at 90.5%. And then the food service component is something that we're going to want to stick with for next year. So I mentioned the twofold kind of goal of middle school, summer school, one being the improvement from the previous year. The second is something that's probably a better goal to look at. It's going to be to continue the program evaluation. So is this working as far as not the growth that they make over the summer, but the retention that they make? So we're working with the assessment office to see that the kids have maintained those skills coming into this year, so they get into the summer. Questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Question is, do you see repetition on summer programs with the same students? In other words, they migrate through, so 7, 8, 10.
We do.
So same people coming through, and you count success by non-repetition, and you.
There's overlap. Now it's a voluntary sign up. So the only carrot, so to speak, that they get for signing up is food. You know, is the food service. There's not really any other hook, or there's no threat of losing credits or anything like that. So so it is a voluntary sign up. We do see some of the same kids identified. Now, when you look between the 10th and 40th percentile in MAP, you know, those getting the kids to where they're not even invited it takes really significant growth. So these are kids that, if you're in between the 10th and 40th percentile, we're probably likely, especially in middle school, we're going to see you invited multiple times.
Right. And the progress that they gain in this is necessary. I mean, in other words, you see that in their you track them in the regular school year and check to see that the progress is continual, or
right. So
count progress.
So MAP is something this is our 3rd year in MAP. So we're using MAP to you know, not only place kids or recommend kids for summer school, but then sort of monitor them as they go through. So essentially, and this is oversimplifying it, but essentially we're taking the kids that qualified to be invited and didn't go, and comparing them against the kids that, again, qualified to be invited and did go, and seeing if those gains that the kids made who came are sustainable over time. So we're looking at those, right? So we're looking at those, and like I mentioned, you know, summer growth is great. To really get our bang for our buck in summer school, we're going to want to see that that growth over the summer is translated to the fall and even winter MAP over time.
Great.
I have a question for Don on Summer Academy. I've got the slide up right here. It shows the data for expected growth versus actual growth. And I just wondered if you could comment on the difference at grade level.
Sure.
You know, it does say, you have a footnote here that says that, you know, the expected growth was for 4 weeks of full-time instruction, full days of instruction, versus what apparently happened.
Correct. So even looking at like the half of that, because they are half days.
Right.
That's basically what we're looking.
So what surprises me is the difference between grade levels. Okay, so for instance, you know, in 1st grade, you're almost even with the expected growth, even though you spent half as much time. You know, but in some of the other classes, or other grade levels rather, it's very different. So why, is there any way you can attribute something to the?
So some parts it could look at attendance. Yeah, thank you. So some of them, it's multiple things. Some are attendance concerns. Some are just different instructional approaches and different environment for these students. Some students are coming on you can look at multiple things. Coming from a longer bus trip and not getting breakfast or not getting snack. There's a lot of different.
Is there any way to track a cohort of kids from year to year? You know, if they attend one year after another, and to see whether the grade level corresponds year to year, just like this?
There is, if like to Tim's point of who is getting invited back and how we're looking at those things. This is across the district too. So I mean, for even we can track that. We can look at that. We just haven't put the data on that. Of what a certain group of kids. You're absolutely right. We can definitely do that. But
okay, thanks.
Yeah, there's a lot of different components to it.
It's great that you're going to have the students traveling with this and in there for multiple times. But what happens as a student moves from yellow to green? Do they still stick with the program?
They typically do not. We usually only target, they do not qualify then. So also another really great point to look at that when we do pull the full data. That student fell in between the green and are now in the green, which is a success, and looking back to see if they fall back into the yellow. Absolutely.
But we can continue to progress monitor those students because we have the map data. So Amy could break that out if we wanted her to.
Yes.
And have many of them gone into the green zone?
So that's
and
something.
And stayed there?
And stayed there. Well, on the special ed side of things, that is, I mean, they're two totally different programs, really, to speak upon, where we've seen a lot of that, and a lot of that though, with the special ed program component, when Wendy was talking about the same teachers of the special ed program that those students actually see. So that's that's all staying consistent. These students are seeing new students, new teachers, new environment, maybe a bus, maybe they walk. It's so completely different, but
it's still valuable.
It is very valuable.
Carrie, historically, we have sometimes included kindergarten and sometimes we haven't. And so looking historically at the data in kindergarten, as you see here, we, just for the reasons that Donna just mentioned, we do have to reflect on the developmental abilities, the developmental capabilities of kindergarten at that point, to go to a different building, new teacher, new peers in a 20 half days. So that was something I know that Kim had talked about in relation to their, what you see there, and you're like the variance. We may have to look at that developmental piece.
Yeah, I automatically threw the kindergartens out.
Oh.
Sorry.
No.
It's the outliers and they're so young, and I thought, okay, it's telling us something, but I'm not very worried about it.
Sure.
But the other things I am concerned about, the whole point of these programs is to keep kids at level from year to year to year. So I hope to see a progression, over say 3 or 4 years, where you would see a more consistent expected versus actual growth, after several years participation in the program. Otherwise, the program doesn't work, or at least we can't prove that it works.
Correct. And this might be, and to your point, Gary, exactly, this might be a whole new group of cohort of students that maybe half the kids from last year are in the green, and we should look at that data as well. Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
And I think it's important to go back and revisit what Dr. Huber was saying. 0 is maintaining. So if they're showing orange, they've made a growth above what we were actually trying to do. We were trying to maintain skills.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You guys can go. Yeah. High school. All right. Elementary, high school. Here we go. All right. So the high school, here are courses that are available. We have 2 different tracks. We have a credit recovery track, and we also have the get ahead track. So there are a certain amount of sections that we do run, and it's detrimental of how many students actually sign up for the get ahead or for credit recovery, and it's a first come first served basis. So when we're looking at this, there's some teacher-led. The teacher-led classes are get-ahead classes. Then we have our online learning, which is the Edgenuity Credit Recovery, which we also offer throughout the school year as well. So when we're looking at this, our enrollment was up this year. Now when you're looking at our 2017 with the blue bar of how many people were enrolled, how many students were enrolled, how many were completed. A lot of the completion portion within that bar, those students were, they completed courses that were get-ahead courses. A lot of our remediation courses, those are students that trickled out after they did enroll. So our enrollment was high. Unfortunately, our completed portion was more of our get-ahead instead of the remediation courses that we had offered this summer. So here's just a breakdown of, we did have 647 students that completed the summer courses that were offered to them. And we have the pie graph showing that the classroom-based where it was more of the student engagement, the teacher interaction was one of the most completed course that was offered. Edgenuity was a 3%, sorry, and then driver's ed was 12.1. Here's our cultural breakdown of what it looks like for this particular summer. And then we also have our SES breakdown, which during this program we also offered the snack and we also offered the breakfast component, which is huge for our students. The Edgenuity course, computer-based programming, is so it's online credit recovery system. There were 3 sessions offered June through August. Students worked at their own pace, and like I said, we also offer within the school year, and students are able to recover multiple classes. So if students work at their own pace, there is a teacher that oversees this, and once a student hits a certain mark within their program or within the course that they're taking online, they're able to, there's a checkpoint, and then they can take a test, and a student or a teacher has to open up those assessments. So it's really at their own pace, so they can really get that credit that they need to if they need to retake that course online, and it's multiple. If a student needs to retake biology and other science courses, then it's at their own pace, and they can take as many as they can within that time.
Donna,
Yes.
that was the majority of students that you said did not complete.
Some that was majority. So there's Edgenuity and there's also remediation classes. So it could be a teacher-led course. However, they're retaking it again. So part of it was Edgenuity, and some parts were a teacher-led classroom as well. So we can pull that data, but majority correct.
Okay, and so looking at that data and going forward, is there anything that you guys are considering to change in order to meet that? Because I mean, the whole purpose of summer school, I mean, granted, I like the part of them getting ahead. My kids did that, but for the students that are truly, I mean, we're trying to close the achievement gap. And if they're failing, and we're seeing that a large majority of it are minorities that are affected by this as well.
Correct.
So, I mean, what long-term?
I'm getting there. Okay. I'm getting there. Okay, so our students that were enrolled for Edgenuity, here's our Edgenuity session. Session 1, Session 2, and Session 3. So that's how many that were enrolled, and that's how many of the total classes that were completed. So if you can see within even Session 2, like, that's how many students were enrolled, but then those are how many classes were totally completed. So Session 1, if you're looking at the data, it's 25 students that were enrolled, and out of those 25 students, at least 35 classes were completed within the 25 students that were enrolled. So you can look at that across the board for 1, 2, and 3. But to speak on your part, I'm trying to get there, sorry. So here's our goals for our future. So some of the courses that we're talking about, the remediation courses, we have students that need more special education support. So they might have a specific learning disability. However, within our program for the high school, we don't have that support offered. So some of our kids are either trying to retake that course, or they're even trying to get ahead, but they have some sort of learning disability. We don't have that support set up yet, and that is one of our recommendations. We would not have any additional FTE that we're asking for. We're just going to kind of rearrange some things so that we can offer more support so we see that growth.
Okay, and then are you because it seems like you were most successful with Session 2 more than any other one. Was that the timing? Was that the time of the month? Was that something? So is that something that maybe we could look at, and possibly maybe that is the most successful time? Maybe less is going on in everyone's life, where they can focus strictly on academics.
Sure. I mean, some of the students, exactly to that point. I mean, summer school starts the first session starts a week after school begins, so we can definitely look at that.
That first session is primarily seniors. We kind of prioritize seniors who would have just graduated. A lot of those students were in Session 1, and they were just taking the course that they needed to earn that diploma. So they may have been a class short. They were a lot of those were in Session 1. Sessions 2 and 3 were a lot of juniors who were taking multiple courses to get caught up. So that's where you would sort of see the spike in terms of, we had a core group of kids in that first session that were really just kind of doing what needed to get done to get that diploma for that school year. Whereas Sessions 2 and 3 tend to be more of the underclassmen that are working to get ahead, so they're completing more courses.
Any questions for our goals for the future?
And have more choice, it sounds like. In other words, they can decide the range of their courses, whereas the seniors really are restricted to those things that they may have been putting off and might be more difficult.
Well, these would have been seniors that would have graduated in May, but maybe were short credit. So they were doing in that session. Juniors, or whoever in those sessions 2 and 3, those were students that could make up any of the credits they had previously failed. You can only take Edgenuity for a course that you've already lost credit for.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems like at the senior level.
Yeah, it does get smaller. The needs are getting
choice
smaller.
gets narrower and narrower and possibly harder and harder.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next we have the diversity needs assessment, data discussion. The Board of Education will discuss information presented at the October 3rd, 2017 school board meeting on diversity needs assessment data. Dr. James Cole will be present to answer questions from the board.
We're connecting Dr. Adams right now.
And this is just an opportunity for the board to ask questions that they've come across as they've been reading through the plans, the information. So it's just an opportunity to ask questions. So why we wait? What's the CUSD score?
1-0.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Throw right a home run in the first.
All right.
My phone's like,
And what inning are we?
right, it's a first to this side. I know.
There's a slight chance of seeing.
Maybe not.
JQ, can you hear me? Okay, we can't hear you. Can you say something?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Shut up.
Good job.
I don't know where you'd like me to stand to answer your questions, but I'm here.
Who has questions?
Oh, I have questions.
All right.
Sure. Doesn't anybody else have questions? You guys did really good. I've read it more than once and I still have lots of questions. First of all, could you please, for anybody else that's going to get these things in print, put page numbers on the needs assessment report. The survey does have page numbers. This does not. So when you take the paper clip off, like I've done a lot of times, it's sometimes a little hard to get back to where you were. Okay, so I kind of lined up my questions based on what I think we don't know yet. We know quite a lot. The climate survey results for me was pretty good. I learned a lot from that data, and I'm still not done looking at all these things. But I did come up with a number of questions that I hope you can answer or direct me where to find regarding both documents. So one is, how do students lose the sense of belonging? That's one way that you put it, between elementary and high school. I know last time we talked about this and you said, I think you said it was not a longitudinal study. But do we need such a thing? I mean, it seems to me that in order for us to have a valid overall plan, we need to have an understanding, or at least try to get an understanding of where we're losing this.
So basically what we've done is we've made a snapshot of what's the climate.
It's a cross-sectional study, right? It's a snapshot in time.
Correct.
Basically.
Yes, and to do a longitudinal study, I pretty much will be getting the same results. And the reason we could say that is because we surveyed and we conducted several focus groups per age group, several focus groups per age group, and we surveyed several people per age group. So the data for the Latino boys and girls was very clear in terms of how they were feeling comfortable in the elementary school, but the further they went away from the bilingual program, they felt that sense of belonging was dissipated. When the question you asked was also, how do you know if someone's not feeling like they belong? That, they tell us. In the focus groups, they told us that they don't see themselves in the curriculum. They don't see, both the parents and the students themselves said that they did not feel that the district as a whole, the teachers were necessarily as culturally and linguistically as sensitive as they could have been. They're not seeing themselves in the material, which is a big thing. We have, basically what's going on right now is we are, even though we are a multicultural, very diverse student body, we are providing very much a monocultural education. And that is what is one of the issues that we've discovered. Because if I'm a black boy and I'm seeing all the literature that I read, or the majority of the literature I read, even the mathematicians and the scientists that I read about are all white people and not black people, right? There's not a diversity in that. Then I'm not seeing myself in the curriculum. And a multicultural curriculum provides for that.
Okay, but let me also ask a related question, and that is, the survey started out, the student survey started out at 5th grade.
Yeah.
So once again, you make a statement that we're doing well in the elementary levels, but if we only surveyed 5th grade, you're just about out of the elementaries. So
because you won't
what
get
happens
much
to everybody else?
Yeah, the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st kindergartens, they're not. It's a different type of research, and they wouldn't be able to respond to surveys like the 5th grade.
So I don't quite understand the statement then about elementary doing so well if we're only surveying 5th graders. How do we know about any of the rest?
Because the parents were also commenting. We had
okay, so you're relying on parental data,
yes,
survey data for every other grade level.
No, it's also the 5th graders. I mean, if you know, as an example, as a 5th grader, my daughter could tell me how all of her previous school years, how she felt accepted or not accepted by her teachers. So as a 5th grader, it's a culminating experience for them in the elementary grades. So that's not an issue.
But there's also the talk about how you ask the kids at the high school level, you know, do you feel like you belong, or is there a problem here or not? And every different group said essentially the same thing, because that's how teenagers are generally. I mean, I'm generalizing here, but sure. I think you made the comment to that effect, or maybe Dr. asked. You know, so I'm wondering, okay, about the 5th graders and about them talking to their parents over time, you know, from kindergarten up to 4th grade. Do they develop some different perception, different way to look at the world? And subsequently, when they tell you, when you're doing the survey this year, when they tell you about their experience from 1st grade or kindergarten, you know, are they being selective perceptually when they look back and say, I felt like I belonged in 1st grade or 3rd grade, but now I don't, or I do? I mean, so how reliant can you be on, you know, the kids and adults telling his experience or her experience over, you know, 3, 4 grade levels?
Focus group research has been in motion for a good, I don't know how many decades. And this kind of research is very solid. When a person is answering a question, we are a culmination of all of our experiences. So we are the sum of all of our experiences, right? And when I'm talking, if I'm being interviewed or participating in a focus group, sure, I'll talk about maybe what happened to me in 3rd grade, but really what's happening to me is how I'm feeling right today, and this experience that I'm having this school year is what I'll be talking about the majority.
Well, I think, you know, the whole concept of nostalgia, at least in my life, you know, has made me.
Well, this is not nostalgia. This is experience of the kids that are happening right now. I'm not sure, I'm not to be argumentative, but I don't understand your question perhaps. I'm not sure what you're trying to ask.
I'm just curious and concerned about the statements that say the elementary kids do so well, that we're performing well with respect to diversity and other issues related to that. you know, at the K through 5, the pre-K through 5 level, you know, but I'm not convinced, based on the data that I see, or rather that I don't see, you know, that I can really know that. Maybe just me, maybe everybody else feels differently, I don't know.
I'm gonna come at it from a different viewpoint if I can. So I get a coherence to a certain extent, the assumption that our grade school kids end up in 5th grade. I mean, in other words, the assumption is that they went through a pathway of grade school up to 5th grade.
Right.
And that 5th grade then will get a picture of those previous grades. I mean, that's the assumption that I'm seeing you use. When I read the study, the thing that was troubling for me is that we lose that assumption at that point. I mean, in other words, that we're making that, the data loses the assumption in the sense that one of the questions that I didn't see answered was, where did you migrate in to the system? In other words, were you in the previous 5 grades, or what point did you? So in other words, if you're feeling like things have changed for that student, in other words, I felt good about.
It's a snapshot, right?
Let me finish. But the point being that what I'm saying is the comfort level. In other words, I don't feel comfortable here now. The assumption is that we did something within the system changed to make them feel uncomfortable. Whereas I didn't see any data that says, okay, somebody who came from another system and was.
They didn't talk about a system before they were here. They would only talk about their experiences in this system.
But the point being, how long were they in the system?
It doesn't matter. And
For a year, it doesn't make any difference.
Sincerely doesn't matter. No, because they're talking about their experiences right now. They're talking about how they feel in their classes right now. You can ask any 5th grader, how do you feel in your classroom? How do you feel the teacher is respecting you? Or how do you feel the district is looking at you? Or how are you being positioned in your? They will be able to answer it very well. It has nothing to do with previous school districts. If they.
Well, didn't you just say we were some of our experiences?
Yes, we are. And they will be comparing perhaps what they did if they did come from another district.
Yeah, they'll be folding that in.
Sure, but they're not going to be putting on us what they experienced in other places.
They're not going to correct it. My point, my feeling on the subject is, if we're going to correct whatever kind of disparity there is between the districts they came from and our district, and trying to be a panacea for any number of other issues that they may or may not have had. I mean, it may be that they were coming from a district where the proportion of the students in the system was vastly different than the proportion of students in our system. In which case,
but we're not talking about other districts. We're talking about our district. The students are really just talking about our district.
Okay.
So if I'm to understand, you're concerned that there may be students in the data who weren't K-5 students. That some of the 5th graders that were interviewed may have not been, again, K-5 students.
And then moving on from there, the students that they were interviewed in 7th or 8th or 9th or 12th came from a system in which 90% of the students were of their particular racial makeup, and in which case, correcting the problem of their discomfort is going to be very different than if they were in our system, where the racial makeup is pretty similar throughout the grade levels. I think, maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm just saying, if you're going to address a problem or you're going to address an issue, that to me is data that's worthy of note. I mean, at least I'd like to know our migration or perhaps a poor choice, but the movement into our grade systems or movement into our grades from external systems. I mean, I think that's relevant data. If I'm going to solve the problem.
I guess my
Jimmy, can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Jump in at any time.
Yeah, I think it's, really important that when you're, reading this data and taking a look at this data,
that you, consider the fact that, first of all, the students were selected randomly. And this was done purposefully so that we could make sure we were going to get a variety of students. And so you're making an assumption as if a large percentage of these students were only here for 1 year or so forth. You can't make that assumption, nor can we do the opposite. But because of the randomness of this, it's far more likely that many of these students are native students who began in kindergarten and will exit at the high school level. Yes, you have high mobility, but it's not that high. You keep a great percentage of your students. And because of the randomness of selecting these students, that's going to be captured within them. That's one of the reasons why we put that safeguard in, so that we made sure that we got a good spread, a good collection of students who would be participating in the focus groups. And then secondarily, all the fifth graders had an opportunity to do the survey. So there you're capturing the whole population. And again, once again, even with high mobility, the vast majority of those students have been in the system and since kindergarten. So I hope that helps clarify.
Thanks.
Yeah. Questions?
Yeah. And getting back to the question about the teens, how do we subtract out that ordinary finger pointing or whatever you call it that happens during the teen years, from the data that we're truly concerned about? How do you go about doing that? How do you subtract out the data that would be provided by kids who just say, yeah, I have a problem, and the other racial group says I have a problem, the other socioeconomic level has I have a problem, and it's just all teachers complain, or I'm sorry, teenagers complaining, as they always tend to do it at that age level. How do we subtract that whole thing?
Well, again, if I can address that, this is the third study that's found the same kinds of information. So this, strongly suggests that this is historical. This isn't a one-time phenomenon. This is something that's been reoccurring within the district for over a period of close to 15 years. And so, we've got to look at this, in that context of the fact that there's some structural things at work here that tell some kids that, this experience isn't all that it can be. And so it's not a matter, once again, of pointing fingers. It's a matter of how do we come together as a district, as a community, to begin to address these needs in a way that young people can find success within this school district. So that's where the focus needs to be. Focus needs to be on centering that. When you look at your achievement data, there is no ifs, buts whatsoever that there is a significant gap between the performance of brown and black kids and low-income kids. That's not sporadic. That's consistent. You can check your data back, until you first started to collect that data. That gap is real and present. If we look at your discipline data, we see the same kind of phenomena that exists. So what's happening with inside your district that certain kids seem to be, make up a greater proportion of those kinds of referrals, and other kids do not. There is a phenomena here that needs to be examined. Yes, could we do more with this data? Absolutely. In fact, we're going to continue to massage this data to try to find out more inferences from it so that we can use it to help you guys make the best decisions you can. Because we know you're tight. The money is tight here, okay? But what should be of singular concern is how do we advance all children in this district to give them the best life chances they can after they graduate from this school district.
Thank you. I see that. I guess one of the problems I have is that, the concept of randomness helps to disallow some of the issues or some of the problems that I have. At the same time, You're right. I mean, our information already shows that there are significant gaps among certain groups and perhaps grade levels and so on. And statistics being what they are, you know, you can say the probability of something, but you can't say who it's going to affect. You know, 1 out of 10 people is going to get some sort of a cancer, you know, but you can't say who out of that group of 10, right? So by the nature of the study, it's random. You don't want to know identification necessarily, or you lose your randomness. But at the same time, and especially when we're funds limited, we'd like to know, you know, can we help out those that we clearly see falling through the cracks? You know, so it's a little bit of a push-pull tension here on, you know, how do I interpret the data? Is the data going to be good enough with the few dollars that we have to help us, you know, apply it in the right places? And so that's why I'm asking some of these questions.
So, and I appreciate that. And like JQ was saying, we don't know the individuals, but we do know groups. And in generalities, certain ethnic groups, certain racial groups are being more successful or less successful than other groups, as it is collectively. So even though we don't know individuals, we do know in terms of groups. And that's what we could be working with.
Yeah, and that's the information we've already got. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me.
But what's different, sure, and what JQ was indicating is that we do know that the referral statistics are unequal, and we know that the education gap is growing. What we didn't know, and that we do know now because of the study, is the perceptions of the kids and the parents and the staff. So now that we have the perceptions, we have their own perspectives on what's going on in the district. That adds color, that adds details, that puts meat onto the skeleton of the data that we've been already knowing for all of these decades.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I've got a question. Refresh my memory. Can you talk about successes that you've experienced after taking this data similar to this? I'm working with a school district, and you know, talk about those school districts, and then what was the timeline? Just by name, and what was the timeline? I'm looking for a very specific answer from you here. What was the timeline that you were able to take the data, and let's just say we paid you to say, okay, come up with a plan for us, right? What's that? I want to know specifically, what's the timeline that you were able to see successes with, and what were those successes, and in what school districts?
Well, it really depends on the buy-in. Those districts that have, you know, what I would call 100% buy-in, you can get turnaround relatively quickly. But when I say buy-in, that means the union has to buy in, the board has to buy in, parents have to buy in, teachers and staff have to buy in. And when that can happen, you can create a synergy, a real energy for change. And so it can be fairly rapid, but even fairly rapid, it still takes time. It took time to create the gap. It's going to take time to close the gap. Okay. But what you really can do is really create that new energy that says we can accomplish this, that we're going to be intentional, that we're going to focus our energies, and that we're not going to stop until we get done. And it can't be a Band-Aid approach. It has to be a systematic, well planned out, well thought out execution of ideas and strategies to make that happen. And it can be done, as I said, in a relatively short period of time if you have the buy-in. The less buy-in, the longer it takes.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, I think. No, I'm sorry. What I'm looking for here is give me specifics on the let's just assume everything was best case scenario. We got 100% buy-in from everyone here. Give me specific time frame that you would tell us that you would expect results and what those results would look, what those successes would look like. And then give me a similar school district that you work with, that you experienced the success, and talk about the timeline.
Well, probably a school district that I could give you, and again, some of this would be, confidential and stuff, and so that's why I'm kind of hesitant in saying things about schools in state. But one that's relatively close to you, we saw rather quick turnaround with that particular school within a very specific 5-year time period in terms of implementation of a behavior management program, implementation of an AVID program, implementation of agreements on professional development, the agreement of the school board itself to undergo professional development training. And when I look back at that particular experience, that may have been the most significant factor, was the fact that the board was willing to roll up their sleeves, to really study along with the superintendent and the leadership teams, to really get a greater understanding of the kinds of issues that were taking place in that particular district. And without a doubt, it takes charismatic, strong leadership from a superintendent that is really kind of acting like with his pants on fire in terms of, closing the gap, making a difference with kids, unifying the community, and getting the job done. So yeah, so it takes a lot of elements, but there are good examples within the state and certainly across the country where we see, fairly dynamic change. And if you want to really study the issue, I can provide you that kind of data. I can't do it right off the top of my head, but if you take a look at the work done at Harvard University with Ron Ferguson, if you take a look at the Coalition of Essential Schools, all those programs there, you can see very good tangible results.
I appreciate that, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I would like to see from either one of you specific. I don't want broad examples. I want specific school districts that you've had, with timelines that you've had successes with.
Well, that's why we need the diversity plan. That's what it was going to be. That next phase was going to begin to develop those kinds of goals and objectives and timelines, so that you guys could see the kind of structure we could develop that could be implemented that would make those kind of changes. That's why this next phase is so critical.
So what I'm trying to understand is, should we enlist your help to develop the plan, right? So what should we enlist your help to develop the plan? What can we expect in specific? Give us like references. Why would we enlist? I'm sorry, what?
This is what we look for in anybody.
In order to, it's not about money, but it's about trying to make good decisions, right? I think that this is, I support this idea in general. But what I don't want to go off half-cocked about something. So what I want to do is make sure that we are very effective in the use of our time, certainly with everybody in this room. And I think for me, I don't want to speak in generalities. I'd like to see specific, concrete examples of where you folks went in, did a similar survey, did a study, and what those results were, how long the timeline was, so we know what we can expect and certainly plan for. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, and that's not what you asked in the first place. Had you asked that, we could have delivered that. We were asked to do a needs assessment, which we have done.
I understand.
Which we have provided you the recommendations from that. Yeah. And if we're allowed to take the next step, we can give you what you want.
Well, before you're allowed to take the next step, I'd like to have my questions answered.
Okay, I got another specific question. Okay, in the data, I could not find, unless I overlooked it somehow, data on disabled special needs, older students. I mean, the diversity is a wide group.
Yes.
Right, so I didn't find anything on that whole area. Why not?
That wasn't mentioned in the focus groups at all. Those issues were not mentioned in the focus groups.
Wow.
How can we implement a diversity plan if it doesn't include a large segment? I mean, we spend tons of money on folks with IEPs and various other issues that are outside the range of our regular students. I don't know how we can possibly implement anything.
I have to believe that within all of the focus groups, that there were multiple students that had IEPs. Maybe not the students that are in the transition programs, but certainly students that had IEPs were part of the focus group. I mean, statistically.
How do we know that, Jamie?
Well, again, if
it's random. That's right, it's random.
But randomly, 16% of our students have an IEP. So I would like to believe that in a random study that the students with IEPs would be represented.
But the solutions didn't include. I mean, I didn't see the solutions included.
Carrie, I have a question for you. I'm not understanding 100% where this is headed. And I'm asking you directly because there's a lot of questions, and you question everything all the time. So my question to you right now, Mr. McDavid gave a perfect example of how he felt, and this is years ago. I worked in the schools for 5 years, and this data here was nothing new. I read through everything. It wasn't shocking. It didn't alarm me. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is happening in our schools. It didn't at all. This was what I saw every day. And what I saw were teachers who cried, who felt they were not supporting their students the right way.
What's your question for me?
Well, I'm getting to it,
Okay.
Carrie. I'm getting to it. I think that everyone that came tonight gave a heartfelt, informational piece of why this is necessary. We've read through it. I hope that everyone on the board read through it. I feel like now what we're doing is we're putting them through scrutiny as if they didn't provide us with enough information when we didn't ask for that. It's kind of redundant to go back and forth. Well, you didn't give me that. Well, you didn't ask for it.
Well,
so now we have to make the best out of that money
it's
that was
fine if you
spent.
want to fault the board for not asking for.
I'm not
what you should have
faulting
asked
the
for.
board. I'm asking you
But
the questions that you're asking them.
I'm
You're
with
asking.
Rick. I can't see implementing something until we know what the likely outcome will be.
Then why did you
what the
ask them?
cost-
Why was that money spent? This is just like Tracy Williams called out all the forum one night and said, no, I'm asking a question. Tracy Williams said, we've had the information, we've had it, and we haven't done anything with it. This is yet another study that is guiding us and telling us what we need, but we're too busy about what wasn't asked instead of what are we going to do to move forward because we've already spent the money.
Bill, do you think we should write and implement a diversity plan that doesn't include folks with IEPs and the various?
Okay, can I say something real fast?
Sure, then I'll make a.
So I think there's some confusion here. And the confusion is we did, JQ and I, in writing this report, we did provide recommendations that feeding off of or responding to what the data was providing to us. You are correct that there's nothing about IEPs and special ed students in this. You are correct on that. However, the diversity plan is not the same as the recommendations that we provided. The diversity plan would be controlled by employees, staff of District 428. They would be looking at the data and looking at their experience, their collective experiences as administrators, as students, as parents, and as teachers. And they would be the ones saying, this is what we need to move forward. So what JQ and I wrote was, yeah, these are recommendations that we saw from the data. But that's not necessarily what you guys have to do. What you really should do is listen to your staff and your administrators and say, allow them to write the diversity plan. We're not going to be writing the diversity plan. We would be guiding them. We have a certain way of walking them through the writing of the diversity plan. They would write it, and they would be making the recommendations. Yes.
Well, I want to make a point very quick. First of all, I'm happy and I'm pleased that the diversity, that the study is done. I'm thankful for the data. I'm not arguing with the data or questioning the data at all. My question rests squarely on you guys, right? Our folks here never written a diversity plan. So what you just said there, you're going to count on them and you're going to guide. Great, right? I'm happy to know that. But before that, I say you're the ones that we choose to guide them. I want to know from you guys, why should we pick you? What successes have you had? Talk about those. That's my question when we go next. Again, I'm not disputing the data. I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying, as you look forward to the next step, give us some successes. Give us some. Talk about the stories that you would use to, in fact, guide our group. Right? You're going to draw on experience. I would guess. Of course. So not now, but come back, write a note, whatever, however you'd like to communicate it. But I think for sure the board would like to know, and I guess in the school district too, what makes you the right fit for District 428 to help us write our diversity?
Are you asking for our resumes? I mean, I don't know.
Not your resume. I just want some real life examples.
I'll give you an example.
Of what you
I'll give you an example.
And successes.
I've worked in probably over 50 school districts. Okay. I'm working in several districts right now, and I typically my focus is working with teachers on helping them better work with their English language learners in the classroom. That's what my expertise is in, ESL, bilingual education. When I work with teachers, they come back to me. Their administrators come back to me. They don't give me hard numbers, but they do tell me their instructional practices definitely improved. They tell me that their students are happier, they're more content in the classrooms, they're improving at faster rates. When I work with teachers, I've worked with literally over thousands and thousands of teachers in my lifetime. I've been teaching for 27 years. I've been to over 30 countries. I've been at NIU now for 7.5 years. This is, I don't remember if you were on the board last year when we first came to you, but I specifically remember saying to the board, I don't need to do this. I have my own full-time job. JQ is retired, he doesn't need it either. We're doing this because it needs to be done, one, and two, because it's what drives us. We look at what's going on in this community. I live in this community. We see what's going on in the community. We see what Val is talking about. We see what all the other people who were talking about this morning, or this evening. And it hurts us, and we want to make a difference. And so when you ask the question, how have we made a difference in districts that we've worked in? I can't give you numbers, but what I can give you is a plethora of anecdotes.
That's great. I'd love to hear anecdotes, realistic anecdotes if I can.
A realistic anecdote would be?
I mean, not now, but you suggested you've got a lot of experience with drawing. It should be very easy for you to do, right? Let's see that before we make a decision. That's all I'm saying. There's no question about the data. It's not about why you're doing it. I think we all can get behind why we're doing this. I can speak for myself. I can get behind why we're doing it, right? And support it 100%. But before I say who, we're trying to make a decision of who should guide the district to help us put the plan together. I want to know what I'm talking about.
Well, let's go. Okay, 2 more questions, and then I think we'll table it to a future. Yeah.
Okay. This one's mine, okay? Yeah, thank you. As I look through things, I see that the ESL component, we have belonging, sense of belonging through grade 5, and then we start to lose it because we're moving away from the dual classroom type of approach as we go. Now that kind of explains what we need to do. It's sort of says, well, let's try 6, let's try 7, let's try 8. That seems like a fairly obvious thing that will come in as part of the plan. That's not the big problem, though. It's a big problem. But the big problem is that sense of belonging is at very low levels among Black students down at grades whatever we start with all the way through. And so far, I've heard one piece of something as a potential piece that you can toss out is let's have an event with the FFA getting together with the Black Student Union and,
That was an example.
and have them organize an event together. And yes, that would be a good thing, but it's such a small piece, and it's like, we gotta do more than that.
We agree.
What are some of the things that you could toss out that we might be able, that you've seen and implemented and done in other places where the problem lies more largely on the black side?
Using multicultural literature, having multicultural curriculum, where the black students, Latino students in the high school level see themselves in the literature, see themselves in the curriculum. That makes a huge difference. If we hired more black teachers, more Latino teachers, so they can see that they have role models. These are things that are concrete ways of making a difference. And the research shows that if you have a black teacher in the first few years of students' lives in the academic careers, it raises the potential of a black student graduating by 40%. So close to 40%. That's huge. So just the personnel change, additions can make a difference. We have plenty of concrete things that we can do. The Black Student Union and FFA, that was just an example. The more we have to be changing the systemic, the institutional way that we're structured in this district. And one way is to, instead of teaching just a monolingual, monocultural curriculum, we should be teaching a multicultural curriculum. And in fact, if you look at Woodstock, they have a dual language program, a two-way dual language program that starts in kindergarten, goes through 12th grade. And their kids, they all become bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural. All the kids who are in that program. It goes all the way through 12th grade. It's phenomenal. They become global citizens. They are more marketable. People are moving to the Woodstock School District. Their property values are going up because people want their kids to be bilingual and biliterate. So these are examples.
It's also attractive community.
But
so are we.
We switch back over to your area of expertise, which of course is true. But that doesn't give us the set of activities, the set of things. We do kind of know we've got to get better textbooks, better support materials. Maybe we can find a black teacher or two. Maybe we should be looking all over the place.
I kind of feel like we should find, I feel like we're getting lost in some weeds here.
Yeah.
And your comment was totally uncalled for and inappropriate, really. That's borderline racism right there. That is what we're trying to fight
What are you
against.
talking about? What comment?
Yeah, which comment?
The attracting, you also attracted that community. Like, what does that mean? What does that
And
mean?
don't call racism. Don't use that term.
Well, that's what,
let's,
that's very,
Yeah.
very
Time to
inappropriate.
I think we need to table this again. There's a lot more discussion that obviously needs to take place here and table it for future meetings and move on the agenda tonight.
Right.
Thanks for coming in, and I hope that, I with my question, I hope you understand. Again, I'm behind this.
Can I make just one more comment
I
before
just wanna share
you close that? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Go for it.
Yeah, and I will be glad to provide for you as much history as you like about the work that I've done in schools for the last 35 years. And, if that's what it takes and is necessary. So what I need to know from you is, do you want to talk to superintendents? Do you want to talk to curriculum directors? What will it take for you to be satisfied that we have some degree of knowledge on these items?
So I think you're right. I think that's a great question from us, and we'll have that answer for you here shortly. As soon as we are able to sit down and discuss what we're looking for you, for example, in specific.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the non-business consent agenda. Do any members want to remove any items to be considered separately?
Yes, I would like to recommend that we move item C for separate consideration.
Okay?
Second that.
Yes.
We don't need it. Okay, so next we have the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through B and D through F. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Karen Malat.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, now we will vote on item C, that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda item C. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Karen Malat.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
No.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
No.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next, we have business consent agenda, that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through D. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Karen Malat.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Next is business and finance, and this is the Lincoln Elementary HVAC improvements, request to bid, and this is an action item, that the Board of Education approve administration to go out to bid for the Lincoln HVAC improvements. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yep.
If we approve this tonight, Victoria, are we approving the method of financing or can that be handled separately?
This is just the bid,
Okay.
go out to bid.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Roll call, please.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Abstain.
Karen Malat.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Next, we have approval of employee insurance renewal premiums, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the insurance committee's recommendation for the benefits renewal items as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Gary, Jeff, you were at the meeting, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think Sarah, I think Sarah could probably summarize it. Paul's here in the back with his assistant. We talked about a lot, again, at the latest insurance committee meeting. And I think that Sarah and Paul can summarize probably for the board what we said.
So overall, we talked across the past couple of board meetings on the 7.7, and so this week we got the Blue Cross Blue Shield. I meant we're still in agreement with them, so there'd be no change, so no fiscal impact there. The big question was really around dental, and whether or not to move forward with a funding program. We had lots of conversation with the committee around this topic. And while I think that collectively we're all in agreement that that is definitely an option we want to consider for the future, we need to have dedicated time and appropriate time to really evaluate our trend data and building that plan moving forward, as well as network. We need to build our dental network before we move forward to make sure we're providing employees with that coverage and network. So our recommendation would be to evaluate that over this next year and make a determination for next year if we want to go self-funding or not.
It had a lot of merit. We just felt that it needed more investigation.
Yeah, and in fact, the timeline required to submit all the necessary paperwork would be an issue. So we thought just based on the logistics alone, there's good reason to not do it, to recommend to not do it right now. Yeah.
Presuming that we give more time on this, will we continue to hold that to United Healthcare with the 17.2% increase?
We are recommending to move forward with United as they came in lower, than our current net life by, a substantial amount. So this, our lowest option right now. We would have to reevaluate at that time, we can look at them on an annual basis to see if we could get, what our options are facing more, what self-funding looks like at that point.
We have great traction with the dentists, as you know. If we get them through contract and have them approve a percentage discount, we're just going to take it on. So we just ran out of time. I still think there's great merit in doing it. And by next year, we'll have our network in place, we'll be well prepared and use. So we didn't want to rush it and disappoint people.
Well, we were very late to game this process, and there was no reason for us to rush. And this is by far the best decision, to sit with this one more year and a lot of time to evaluate and then make a well-educated recommendation.
And Jamie, this was the consensus of the entire committee. I mean, we really didn't have anybody on the committee that didn't feel that way.
Anything else to share?
I just want to point out that, excuse me, that the Blue Cross Blue Shield 7.7% included, I think falls at 4% for the ACA.
Yes.
It's sort of a benchmark that they tossed in there, right? Yeah. And that bothers me, but on the other hand, it doesn't bother me to go ahead with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, I think any other vendor is going to do the same thing. It just bothers me that we have to accept that notion, that it's an unknown quantity and that they've built in, some amount of additional cost as a risk factor against what might happen or not happen. So I just want everybody to be clear that the 7.7 includes that, not just our claims history or any other thing that built into that increase.
And it's mostly driven by the AHA. I mean,
Entirely driven.
Right, and it's entirely driven by that. So, and thanks for your work and talking to them and negotiating that.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you both.
All right, any other questions? All right, roll call, please.
Craig Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Halpern,
Yes.
Gary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes. Next, we have new business administration.
Thank you very much.
DHS Assistant World Director, differential funding request. And this is an information item. So
Jill pretty well with us tonight. We've had a chance to talk quite a bit over the last few weeks related to the next two items that we have on the agenda, which the DHS Coral Dresser, as well as a letter of agreement for differentials. So the Coral Director, we have found at the high school that there has been an increased interest, and stop me and jump in if you like, for the acapella program. So we previously with the contract had more than one differential slated for the assistant choral director to serve his purpose. This year, that was not filled, so the funding was eliminated. So it's written within the contract that the funding is impaired. What this has resulted in is, from last year's interest alone is about 60 students that are unable to participate. 90 audition, 30 are able to participate. The current director there, did make efforts to try to include these 60 students. However, time constraints, it just isn't feasible. I mean, tripling the program size essentially.
Well, and if I can just speak to the fact that last year, you may recall that the middle school started an a cappella system as well. Because the a cappella group has been such a huge draw for our choral students, Mr. Erickson really felt like he wanted to add another group or two groups. But as Sarah mentioned, we didn't have the personnel to fund that. And if you know anything about Mr. Erickson's a cappella program, you know how many hours and hours and hours are spent with that group. Hence, they went second in the United States. In order to continue that program, Mr. Erickson gave a really great analogy and said, here we have the middle school program. We have no JV a cappella. So it goes from middle school to varsity a cappella essentially. And we don't have a place for those JV kids to grow and hone their skills so they can eventually be in that top group that's doing amazing things. So luckily, we do have a couple of personnel in our music faculty that actually work in a cappella at Dekalb High School that could help lead these groups and have firsthand experience. So it was funded in the past. In the last few years, it has not been funded. So that is what that is representing.
So that is, just a request to reinstate, just brought forward for information tonight for you to consider and if any questions you may have.
And as we discussed, this was a one-year agreement.
The ones that we're going to talk about tonight related to differentials are specifically 1 year. not to confirm, one way or another, they will be recommended to continue next year because we're conducting the district-wide differential analysis right now. So it's, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to say at this time one way or another.
Is this, when are you seeing this happen? In other words, immediately or as soon as
Pretty
possible?
much as soon as possible. Here's the issue with that is that right now it's madrigals. As you all know, madrigal groups perform in December. So right now it's madrigal season, so to speak.
And everybody loves them.
They're amazing.
Everybody loves
And a lot of those same kids, of course, end up in a cappella with others. So a cappella officially starts after madrigals, but really it's before that.
Right.
So it would be something that we'd like to implement as soon as possible so those groups could, and just, I don't know if you mentioned this year, I think you did. It went from 90 kids trying out to 50 because those 60 students that didn't have an opportunity to participate were frustrated.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to get that as soon as possible so that that other director can help with those.
So we would be looking at, November 7th.
Yeah.
For.
So for a vote.
So do we have a consensus then to bring this back?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't move.
Yeah.
DCTA letter of agreement differentials, and this is an informational item.
So there's three differentials included on, this item. The first one is for PBIS. And this one, it was brought to our attention that last year there was a verbal agreement at the elementary school for PBIS to be increased based on the number of sections. We are recommending that that be supported again this year as the situation is the same. And again, this is one that we would ask terminate at the end of this year as we evaluate the entire differential process and determination process as far as the responsibility factor, how it relates to student enrollment, participation, et cetera. But we'd like to support that for this year, and that's at Little John Elementary. And the individuals that were splitting that differential are, again, splitting it this year. They're performing, the duties. It's right now the responsibility factor. We're requesting it to be raised to 0.12 as it was last year.
Questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I've been tracking this a cappella and other they're not extracurricular, but these non-academic. I mean, they're not math and reading and science and stuff. I've been tracking this stuff for 15 years since my kids were in the district, and we just got done with a very long discussion on diversity needs. And this is a great example of these various things of where all different kids get involved and get deep into it and have such a good time and put on such a good face for our district, We have to consider all things, all these differentials as the cost. Wow, I'm really convinced that this is one of these two things. These are the kind of stuff that we can just move ahead on without a lot of consideration. I mean, we should always look at the cost and compare.
And Carrie, if I could add the sense of community that you may have noticed in those groups, as you're mentioning.
Yeah.
It's a family.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I watch these kids at 15 years now. I watch them, and it's just amazing. They get along so well. It's just a wonderful thing.
But not only the community within the group, but the fact that
everyone knows the whole community loves
community loves them. They just flock to these events. So the consensus would be.
Do we have a consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Absolutely.
For the last, and then the second two on here, I'm sorry, just make sure that we're sure.
You're just so excited.
These are
I'm
questions.
sorry.
The last two,
Derail.
it's okay, I just want to make sure that your last two are for similar on the same lines for assistant band director, one at Huntley and then one at Dekalb at a 0.05 and 0.04. And that is really just for concert activity and the duties that go along with that as well, but along those same lines.
When those positions were added, this is the third year of those positions, and all of the music teachers have differentials for outside concert time and outside weekend events. And when we added those positions, we had, when Mr. Potts had 90 kids in sixth grade band, we had to add the 0.8 position at Huntley, and that is the third year, and then we had to add another concert band director in. Unfortunately, the differentials just weren't added with that position. So that's something that we've been hoping to include because they do need as part of their category 1 duties. That's supposed to be contractual as to what they're getting. So that's those two as well.
Do we have a consensus to bring all three back?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work.
And with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.